Huddle. All right, we'll start that again because the recording just happened. Welcome everybody to Huddle. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Excelente. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, it's a beautiful fall day. Gotta love it. How's everybody doing? Travis is smiling.
Doing well.
Yeah, good. All right, Rob, how are you doing?
Good. I got my screen angled because we got multiple people here, so we're doing a great time. Having
Nice.
a good time.
I love it. All right, good, good, good. Well, welcome to Huddle, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. I appreciate you taking the time to sharpen the saw, come together, maybe a dose of optimism, and also some content that you can use throughout this day, this week, and help you out. So we've got a couple things that are on the list today. A reminder about our two companion addendums that go along with compensation. I wanted to point out maybe a couple things there. The main meat of this discussion is going to be using the buyer services overview document that was just released by marketing. We mentioned this in sales meetings. So this is now available. This is a simplified form of buyer services, hence the title overview uh, that goes along with the buyer guide, right? So that's probably going to be our discussion today. I hope that that's helpful. So Mike, do you want to? What am I missing? What am I on what we talked about? Anything?
No, I think you're right on. So, do we want to talk about contingency addendum or the other one?
Why don't we start with the contingency addendum first, and then we'll go with the real estate brokerage compensation addendum. This I hope that this is becoming old hat, and if you kind of rolling your eyes, going we've already gone over this, then good, you're probably in the right place. What is the purpose of this form? Why did we feel like we needed to add an addendum that says this offer is contingent upon the buyer's broker and seller brokerages accepting the compensation agreement? Why? What's the need for this? What's the reason? Anybody want to vocalize that or put in the chat? Why did we feel a need to have this document? Oh, the silence is killing me.
Because you don't want to have an offer out there where they accept the offer and they don't accept the compensation agreement.
Perfect. That's it. Yeah, so you're writing your offer. Maybe you had a conversation already with a listing agent. They said that since this is Brookshire only, we can say numbers. So they said it's 3%. Send over the comp agreement. So you did. Maybe you've already signed it. Maybe I've signed it. Rob signed it. Kevin Larson signed it. Your manager signed it. Mike, whatever, has signed it already. And off it goes. And you don't get it signed back. So if you don't have it already executed by both parties, by both brokers, then we need a way to make sure that our offer is contingent upon that happening. If it's already signed, you don't need it. If you already have the real estate compensation addendum signed, you do not need this form. This is only when it's not signed. Any questions on this one before we go to the other companion addendum?
Yeah, Sally asks, curious if the Rep C already states that info, and I'm guessing. I think Sally, are you asking if it already states that the offer is contingent on that commission? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So pull up, do you want to pull up 4.3 really quick?
Yep.
By the way, Sally, I am really digging some of your photos of those beautiful rivers that you've been fishing in lately. Wow, that just really made me want to go get my fly rod and go do some fall fishing. That looked beautiful.
Thanks. It's a great way to recharge your batteries.
Yep. And boy, do we all need that, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the Rep C 4.3. The question was, is there anything stated in 4.3 already that might address anything about conditioned upon compensation? So here we are. I hope this is a review for everyone, but we're looking at 4.3. Let's drop down to E. This is our infamous, new 4.3E. recently added language that we got. I guess it's been almost 2 months now. But the simple answer is there's nothing in this language that says it's conditioned upon an agreement. I think where we might have the wires cross is halfway through there. You'll see it says this payment shall be made in addition to any other compensation agreed to by seller's brokers to buyer brokerage, referring to the real estate compensation agreement. But it's in addition to. So I think this is, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but if you put, say, 1.5% in 4.3E and 1.5% in the real estate broker compensation agreement, then your total compensation would be 3%. And that's why that language is in there in additional compensation. But there's nothing that says the offer is contingent upon the seller or the listing brokerage compensating the buyer's brokerage. Okay, we good on that one?
Will, as a strategy, is it better? Is it generally better to have this as the last addenda in the offer?
Well, okay, the real estate broker compensation agreement is not an addendum, and it wouldn't be.
Okay.
Remember, that's why we'd have to have that language is to tie it back into the REPC because it sits alone.
No, yeah, I understand that, but this contingency, would this contingency be? This is an addenda, right?
That's correct.
It is. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, so my
yeah.
tendency would be to put it last. Is there logic in that, or does it matter? I guess.
And unless something modifies an addendum after in its sequence, then there'd be no change. So remember, addendums only modify what they are modifying. And so unless somebody, wrote another addendum that was subsequent in order, then it would not modify any previous.
Well, I think,
last
Will, I think she's saying
yeah.
I think she's saying if she were submitting an offer, and let's say that they're asking for closing costs in addition to this with the offer, they're a particular strategy to put this in front of the closing costs or have the closing costs be addressed first and have this last. Is that what you're trying to say, Kim?
Well, I would always rather have my price come after, but it's from a legal standpoint, it doesn't matter its enforceability whether it comes in whatever order. So I don't know that there's something very material about it, but I probably would tend to probably put it last. But it could easily be countered. There could be counter offer number 4 and then 5 and then 6 so it doesn't end up being last. So
Right.
Yeah.
Well, my question is, this is something that I feel like a seller would counter to you asking for 3%. Why would you send it with your initial offer when you input 3%, you're asking for 3%, period. And if they accept that, they also are accepting paying the brokerage, correct?
Yeah. Ideally, what we want is if you call me up and say, what's the compensation? And I say 3 and you send me over the real estate compensation agreement and we sign it, there's no reference to commission in the REPC. And the reason for that is what you're bringing up is because we'd really rather not have another term in the REPC the seller can counter and keep beating up the compensation. Once it's already been agreed to, we'd like to stick a pin in it, the commission's done, and we move on. So that's the pro to using the real estate compensation agreement is get that thing signed before the offer, and then you don't have to have this addendum tying it back into the REPC. So yeah, you're bringing up the very reason why we are still in favor of having the option of broker to broker compensation.
I'm getting sellers agents. This has happened twice now that they're like, no, put it in the offer. No, we want it in the offer. And that's what I'm battling is I don't want to, but so far in both offers I've written, I've put it in the offer after going through conversation, and I'm not able to convert seller's agent to like that.
Yeah. This is let's expect it, guys. Let's completely expect that this is going to happen. There's different opinions out there. And here's what first of all, let's start off with from listing agent's point of view. If you've mistakenly viewed the buyer agent as an adversary, then you're going about it wrong, and it's a dead end. We need to be kind, gracious, and accommodating to buyers agents. They've never had a harder time ever to show a house, to write an offer than they have now. They're having to give their value proposition sometimes quickly, negotiate that commission up front. This is a shift and a change, as we all know, and they're now seeing our listing. So if you're seller and not you remember, guys, I think sometimes we put our expectations in the minds of the seller. Yes, it's our job to counsel with them, but be very careful. I mean, there's very good things about the real estate compensation, and there's also really good things about having it in the offer. And I think you just have to review that. One of the takeaways I think from today should be this overarching message of embracing complexity. And the more complex it is, the better it is for us to show the solutions to these problems, because that's where value is created. I was talking to a competing broker today. Well, I guess, a colleague broker. And he suggested that commissions are going up because the buyer, on the buyer side, because the buyer agent is now to control this number, because they're having conversations up front with the buyer instead of just waiting to see what the commission is going to be. It all begins with that, and that's why we're talking about this presentation piece today, which is the overview of services. But I think, look, you ought to look at it through the lenses of the two different perspectives, and not play Utah versus BYU here. There's not a right or wrong. It depends. Okay, every situation's a little bit different. There's advantages to both ways of compensating. So be careful of that. Whatever direction your seller and you decide to go is okay, as long as you're not injecting an improper expectation, like it's wrong to or illegal to use a real estate brokerage compensation form. Not true, not accurate, not at all. There's a lot of benefit to that. And then you say, well, it should only be done in the rep C. Again, the counter is also true. Not always the best place. So remember, we need the buyer's agent to get the home closed, and we want their buyer pool. We want the buyers that are with the agents that are actively looking, and this has not changed for decades in our business, and so just remember that. Either way you decide to go, okay. Good guy. Oh, thanks for bringing that out. I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. So let's just put that other form up and you guys tell me why we needed this one. This is our real estate brokerage compensation addendum. So for those of you who like to put or prefer to put or you end up putting it in the rep C, the compensation, why did we feel like we needed to have this language added?
Didn't you say earlier that this is it kind of puts a ease to everyone's mind that we don't need to show them our buyer broker agreement if or listing agent agreement, whatever the case may be. This is just kind of the clarification behind that.
Yeah, that's definitely okay. I think that's enough to get us kicked off. Thank you. Good observation. So you write the compensation in the rep C, and what we'll hear from listing agents is, well, how do I know your buyer broker A even exists? Two, that it really does say 3%. And for the first time in real estate history, we have an undertow of listing agents suggesting their fiduciary duty requires them to negotiate the lowest possible buyer broker fee and look for ways to increase the net to their seller by reducing the buyer agent compensation. You guys with me? And it's wrong. I mean, it's got some serious flaws to it. I think that's just a knee-jerk reaction. And this is what kind of fosters this become more problematic. It's kind of like a disease that can be brewing here, where it becomes adversarial with the buyer's agent. Like I don't need them and I don't care about them. And should we follow that through to conclusion? You know what that means, right? If we follow that to conclusion, then there's no reason for you to ever market a property inside of Brookshire or on any kind of MLS or do anything other than to find your own buyer for your own listing at any time. You understand that, right? That's where that's where that thought takes us. If you go all the way to the end of that road, it means we never need another agent. And really that's just a very short-sighted view of the value of a buyer's agent and what they bring to the table, including their client. In no small part. Like that's probably the biggest part in the eyes of the seller is I want their client. I want their buyer. So why did we need this? Well, from when you go to author your offer and write it, in order to answer this question about whether you have a BBA and at what the rate is, we went ahead and had you affirm that in writing now. Instead of saying like text or email or other ways, it becomes formal. And we really believe that if you use this, it makes your argument better to justify your 3% commission. So what does it say? In regards to 4.3, buyer has entered into a written buyer-broker agreement. Remind you, all you, I was going to say scriptorians. For all you formatorians out there, this is the very similar concept that came out of the Park City Forms Committee. It's the same kind of concept, is where you declare that you have a written buyer-broker agreement. It also is found in the real estate compensation agreement from UAR. Mike, how fast could you pull that one? Or would that just be... I've got it here somewhere.
We're just talking about compensation agreement from UAR, right?
Yeah, just the normal everyday compensation agreement, UAR, not the Berkshire Hathaway form. Okay, sorry, I had it in a different pile here, guys. So far I can't find that one. Can you find it, Mike? I think it's the first paragraph. Okay, I've got it. I'm sorry, it's number 3. Yeah, so this idea of declaring that I have a buyer broker agreement that is executed and signed, this is the UAR form. Buyer's broker has a written buyer broker agreement that obligates the buyer to compensate the buyer's brokerage. Buyer and buyer's brokerage agree that the buyer's obligation may be satisfied by third party, including the seller's brokerage. Buyer's brokerage may not accept compensation of anything greater under the obligation of the buyer broker agreement. So this is a way to help present to sellers that, yes, I do have an agreement. I affirm it. I mentioned this in the IDW in front of the state of Utah, that when we make a written affirmation in a contract, if we misrepresented that, we would lose our license. And boy, did they agree, because it becomes bigger than just a clerical error. It's a contractual document that elevates its importance and in the eyes of the discipline. So these could be huge fines from the state. I'm not talking to, everyone's like, oh, Department of Justice. And, look, the state of Utah, if an agent misrepresents that they have a buyer broker agreement and they really do not, yeah, that's going to be a big one. Okay, well, it goes further than that. Let's go back to the other one. So this, see, they're similar. This addendum that's a Berkshire form is taking concepts that are there in a broker fee agreement from one MLS forms committee and taking it from the UAR, where the first one says we have a buyer broker agreement, but we go one step further. It says what it is. So we put our fee in there. So we declare again in writing that we have a 3% fee. Okay, so obligates the buyer to pay the buyer's brokerage a real estate brokerage fee in the amount equal to, this is what we'd say, 3% of the gross acquisition price of the property. So not only do we say we have one, but we also say what the fee is, which neither of those forms do, by the way. So we're taking it one step further. We think this will help you make an argument for your compensation. The next paragraph. So number 2, yep. This is where we declare that the title company will actually hold in their hand a copy of the BBA. Have anyone had a listing agent right now to say to you that they want a copy of your buyer broker agreement? Not yet. Nicole, you're saying no. Kim, no. Chuck, no. No one's asked for it yet. Okay, in the chat, Linda says yes. And Alicia says yes. So a few of you. Sally, no. Anybody else have a yes out there? No?
Feels like it was happening right when the changes occurred, and that I haven't
heard it lately.
I haven't heard it lately. Seems like that's died down a bit.
Yeah, and what's the problem with us providing a copy of the buyer broker agreement to the listing agent? Mike, do you want to say what just what's the problem with that?
Yeah, I mean there's a few things going on there. I mean, I think that one, it's an agreement between you and someone else, and doesn't need to be shared with anybody else because it's between you and a buyer. And there's a confidentiality issue at play as well that we don't need to, we don't have the permission from the buyer to necessarily share anything that's related to their purchase. So, yeah, no real strong reason for us to share.
Yeah, and you can kind of get why the listing agents are saying this. They just want to make sure their seller is not overpaying something that's obligated to. So the reason we have this addendum is to put them at ease and say someone will be looking at this document to make sure that you can feel comfortable in telling your seller that when you pay 3%, you are matching the compensation of the buyer broker agreement. See, this is really a kind of a chess move, I guess, to show that. Now, listing agents sometimes said, well, should I counter with this? Well, why wouldn't you? If you're a listing agent, why would you not want them to declare that they have a buyer broker agreement and tell us what the fee is and have the title company verify that? Right? I think it's a really good document that can be used. Now, I'm being reminded in my head, like little birdie goes, Will, make sure that you tell everybody it's not a mandatory form. Because this is like sometimes in training, we walk away, we go, oh, I have to use this always, every time, 100% of the time. No, it's highly recommended because it's an asset for your buyer when you write the offer for your buyer. And listing agents, if you having some problems, with the seller saying, how do you know we're not overpaying and all of that? Well, it's a great counter addendum to use. Do you have to have it? No, you do not. If it's not a concern to you to see a copy of the buyer broker agreement, seller's happy, you're happy, all that's great. You do not need this form. Okay, everybody good?
Alicia in the chat says, I have had a listing agent say the seller will pay what your buyer broker agreement is.
Okay. Well, then I love this form for that because I send this over and I say, I've got a buyer broker agreement. It's at 3%. So how about this one? Let's see how smart we are. What section of the exclusive right to sell authorizes the listing agent to tell us what? Don't pull it up quite yet, Mike, but you can have it ready. What section of the Rep C identifies what the seller's agent is authorized to tell the buyer agent about the comp? So when you call a listing agent and they say, we'll pay whatever your buyer broker says, what section of the listing agreement would say that? Anybody know? Wish I had some money to give away.
Rob, I liked that. I think that was a subliminal message, wasn't it? I think I'm tracking with you.
You saw that. Good.
I did, yes.
All right, we've
All right.
got 2.1, 2.2. Looks like a tight grouping there of suggestions.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I'm realizing I don't have a copy of the UAR version of the but it's the same number. It's 2.2. I don't know, guys, just so you know the forms well, authorization to offer compensation to buyer's brokers. So the company is authorized to advertise or otherwise communicate that the seller and company is offering to pay compensation to a buyer's brokerage in the amount of, say, up to 3%. And the reason it says up to is because it can't be more than the buyer broker agreement. I think, initially this was received as, oh, it's very variable, depending on how much we like you or who your favorite football team is. Like I'm come on, I'm joking, but I gotta be my own laugh track here. um, all right. So if you want to ask more specifically, what you're saying is, what does section 2.2 say of your listing agreement? That's what you're asking. And what my fear is and my take is, because I've been doing this way too long, is the seller and the agent talk about that number, and then the listing agent decides to do something different. And they think that they're doing their seller a favor. Look, the seller gave the agent written instructions to communicate a number. And we're just asking, what is that number? And I've had people say, well, it's blank. So what do you think about that? Let's put our listing agent hat on for a second. Should we have it be blank? Listing agents, should we have section 2.2 be blank? I mean, it's a pretty material term. Do you want me to say nothing? I mean, I need some instructions. How do you want me to respond to the question when an agent says, what is the compensation towards a buyer's agent for the buyer? And I mean, I've had people tell us as brokers, this is the calls we take.
Up to 3%.
Yeah. I mean, we would love to have it say up to 3% on every time because we know that gets the best buyer pool. And that's the reason for it. But we've had some people say, well, I'm going to leave that blank and I'm going to kick it back to the buyer. What would this be like? Like, come on, we're smart enough. What would this be like? How about I call and ask, hey, Nicole, unmute for a second. What's the list price of your house over on Oak Ledge Drive? Don't give me a number.
No volume, Nicole. Looks like you have a mic input problem.
Are you good, Nicole? Are you unmuted? Say test, test.
She's unmuted.
Is it working?
There we go.
There you go. Now we hear you.
Okay. You want me to give you a list price?
Yeah. What's your list price of Oak Ledge Drive?
$1 million.
No, you're going to tell me that you left that blank.
Oh, the list price?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah. We don't have a list price.
Let's say we're a builder developer. We're trying to reach a larger buyer pool. So we decided to offer some concessions in loan fees. And let's say it's $20,000, what you've been talking about. And I call you and I say, Nicole, are there any concessions? Or maybe I see a flyer, or maybe I see in the MLS that there's concessions here. And I say, can you confirm that? And you go, well, they've actually changed. And then you don't tell me the number. So this seems a little, this seems problematic. It puts up obstacles. It makes it more complicated. One of the other brokers on a panel preparation this morning said, everyone's trying to get too cute with this. Like if your seller has a list price, you tell everyone, right? If they have concessions, you tell them that. If they have a buyer compensation, you tell them that. It's ridiculous. If you're going to fix something, if there's a repair, if there's an allowance, if there's anything, it's the offering and it's the terms of the offering that we're communicating. It seems adversarial and complicated. Like we don't want to make the sale happen. What if I walked onto the car lot and I go, hey, how much is this car? And they're like, you know what? I don't know. Or I'm not going to tell you. You're like, what? Do you want to sell it or not? It starts to speak to, are we, pushing buyers away, or are we encouraging buyers? Are we pushing agents away, or are we encouraging agents to bring us their buyers? And I think we have a chance here to be a beacon on the hill, to be the example, to be positive and kind, and really accommodate the buyer agent better than we ever have. And really, like, oh, I would love to show a Berkshire Hathaway listing, because they go out of their way to make sure that, I know what my compensation is. Gosh, the lights are on. They were grateful. They even sent me a card, like they were kind, and that will go a long way. Okay, well, that's been fun. At least for me. And Mike, he's smiling too. All right, so we did the one more thing on that addendum. The last paragraph, in case you haven't dug that deep or you've forgotten. Do you want to pull that one back up on the real estate compensation addendum? The very last paragraph is meant to just clarify. So at the very bottom, it says, in regards to the total compensation. Do you see the word total is there? So I really like that, because 4.3 contemplates additional compensation from two different sources. And some of our sellers might be confused by that. So this is a way for us, again, to bring some clarity and reassurance that the total amount of compensation is coming from one source. That's 4.3 in the REPC, and there's no other compensation agreement floating out there. It's only 3%. Good? Okay. All right. Let's, enough of forms. I've been reminding everybody every chance I can to make sure you use the forms in your presentations, because in the form is the complexity. And when you show complexity, then you can show solution to the complexity. When you do that, you have value. Okay. And when my colleague said that he believed that in many cases commissions are going up, it's because buyer agents are doing a good job of showing the problems and complexity and the things that buyers didn't even know. They were oblivious to some of these problems that can come up. We've got a new spin on fraud right now that's going on. We'll talk about in sales meetings next week. But oh my gosh, there's always a villain out there that wants to take equity or take price or take money or take time or add to legal issues and the chances for litigation. There's always a villain out there. And you guys are the hero in that story. And the better you explain problems and complexity, the better value your solutions have. That's why our colleagues suggested that commissions are going up. So let's own that. I think that's the truth, and that's optimism, and it's controllable. You guys can control that. Okay. I got to cut back to like one Red Bull, Mike. I think 3 is just too many. Don't you think? 3 is probably.
If I ever see you actually drinking a Red Bull.
Is that your conscience or is that your heart talking to you?
I know, yeah. I just get so excited, Alicia. Sorry. I know that can be like, it's too much. Okay,
I love it, Will.
You love it? Okay, oh, that's good. Well, a couple do. All right, let's go to the new presentation form that was just released. Okay. All right. So you're looking at the buyer services overview. When I'm thinking about my buyer presentation, I hope you're memorizing these 8 chapters or 8 segments, so that you can, like, if you're teaching this, and if you look at it from a teaching point of view, you want to make sure you're using the same simple dialogue so it's easier to follow. Okay. So notice that we did use a lot of the headings and the same wording that is in the buyer guide. And Mike, you want to bring that up? This is suggesting we go from here to home. These are services that help us walk you through every step. It's essential to begin with a detailed buyer consultation, and we're encouraging that. So this document you can hand to people, and this marketing piece is like all about spending the time to educate them on the truth about what it takes to buy real estate today. And that's where we show the movie, the villain and the hero. This is where we bring it all out and we educate them. So this is not an exhaustive list, and it wasn't meant to be, but it's meant to be enough that you can talk when you only have, say, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. This is how this was born. The buyer guide fits the 30-minute, 45-minute, 1 hour pretty well. You can go through it mostly in that time. And we all want that. In a perfect world, we would frankly never even use this. But if you get a sign call and your home is under contract, but the one around the corner is available, and you need to set it up something that you've not met, they're not a past client, they're not center of influence, it's a conversion, say, to a sign call. This is something that you can send digitally. And I think we need to start getting the practice of getting these documents out to buyers quickly, because we all know what the rule is. Can't show the property until a buyer broker agreement is signed. And we prefer those buyer broker agreements to have it enough time so that there's some substance behind them. We've heard very few 3 and 5 day buyer broker agreements. There's a little out there, but it's certainly not even, I wouldn't even say it's not common, because it's not more than 50%. It's actually still very rare. So it seems like we're doing a pretty good job. So to introduce you to this form, notice what we have on the columns here. We're coordinating initial buyer consultation. You could speak to that and say, right now I need a commitment. We could maybe later expand the buyer broker agreement later after. So we could start off maybe truncated and then expand. We need to review and sign the buyer broker agreement, say which I brought with me, if that's the case, or you could send it digitally to an email. Discussing financing options. Right off we're following the order of the buyer guide. And I wish everyone could have seen, and man, it's a bummer that Travis dropped off, but Travis did a really marvelous presentation in the Old Mill sales meeting yesterday, as we were all in person, at least in Old Mill. And we did a real deep dive into how we answer this question about rate, which seems so simple. What's the rate? 6.3. Well, it's way more complicated than that. And if you've taken the time to really study what the triggers are, you'll know that. And it even can come down to the person and the property and all these other variables. Well, again, what Travis did is he showed the complexity. And when he showed the complexity, the solutions to those problems bring value to Travis and Metro Mountain Mortgage, the same way it does with us. And so, although I like this idea of having a very short, form to use, this should have a huge warning to you and I. The more you simplify something, the lower you present problem and complexity, right? Because you haven't had the time to do it. So, and that's a problem for us. Because if there's no problems to solve, then there's no value in the solutions. So this tool is meant for those times where you don't know the person and it's short. You have a short amount of time. So help in the process, create a home search. You can talk about technologies and tools there. Finding the right home is the same language we use in the circle graph here on the buyer guide. And identifying the home and scheduling other showings, things of that nature. Feedback and analyzing property are the next 2 bullet points there. Maybe I'll skip over to the other side where it says discussing options for strongest possible offer. This is, of course, if we're in a competing situation. And then the next are my favorite, of course. This is constructing the offer and the documentation needed to protect them and to lower their legal risk. And it's very complicated to write an offer today. And you look at the trajectory we're on, I don't even know where we're going to be in 10 years from now, because in the last 20 years, we're, 200% more forms than we used to have. In early 1990, when I got my license, there was maybe a total of 7 forms, total, everything, disclosures included. And now, we've got, I don't even know how many. Does anyone know how many forms we actually have today? But supplementary clauses, I know my forms manual is...
Hey, Will, I know the answer to that question.
You do, Tom? What is it?
2.
2?
Too many.
Oh, too many. Got it. Nice, Tom. Well, that's a good one. I love dad jokes, too, for that reason. If I take closing documents and supplementary clauses, I'm going to look at that and go, that's probably 250 pages. It's crazy. But embrace the complexity, because that's why we're needed. So here you have walkthrough, negotiations, organizing the inspection process. Hopefully this is a natural conversation as you're standing there looking at this home about to go in. Or, if it's in a gallery space or if it's an open house and you're about to walk over or drive over to this other home, that you've got a little bit of time to kind of talk more about what these bullet points means. These are simple talking points. It's certainly not expanded. We would do that in the buyer guide, right? Okay. So we go all the way down to where we have, settlement, closing, recording, possession, and delivering the keys. And there's your simple tour of what this form is. Again, it's meant to be used when you don't have a lot of time. Do you like it, guys? Do you see a use for it for those rare times?
I'll chime in. I
Yeah, go
think
ahead,
it's
Tom.
excellent. I think it's an excellent document. I think what you said in sales meeting, which is really why I came to attend today, about the imperative we have of building benefit. I don't remember exactly your line, but it was you can't build benefit too soon. There's no such thing because the value proposition in our business, in my opinion, probably others, is fundamentally and essentially changed for the buyer brokers who have been fundamentally basing their business upon a relationship or a kinship or some type of informal introduction to someone, and there's no empirical value being exchanged by and large between wannabe buyer brokers or broker agents in general, and thus we suffer. The buyer broker, the seller broker, the client, we all suffer because it's like you say, well, to quote Zig Ziglar, it's like spilling your candy in the lobby. And that's what I see in this form. That's what I see in that document that Cheryl Knowlton, I think, I give her credit for it, wrote about 120 things that we do to do a deal, action items, and not to mention the absolute imperative, and the older you get, the more you realize this, of the value of your time. A cup of coffee costs you $2 or $3 these days, but your time is priceless. And if those people that you're working with don't understand that, they may not be worth working with.
Yep.
Sorry, didn't mean to get on the soapbox.
No, I love it. One of the quotes I've been saying is if benefit is realized prior to price, then value is justified with cost.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down.
And so Tom is saying that benefit can't happen early enough because it must happen early. Because if it happens after the commission rate is discussed, you're never going to have it justified because nobody knows what they're getting. Can we do can I call an audible? This is a football analogy. I'm behind the center. I'm looking at the defense and I see plays for us to score a touchdown right now. Go on your chat right now. And I want you to think about something. There's all the things you do. Let's think about what you do. Okay. I schedule a showing. I pull comps. Okay. I tour a property. I help with the inspection. All the things that you do, forget those for a second and tell me why you do them. Just tell me what is the benefit of what you do and type those in the chat. Let's see how many benefits we can get in our brains in the next, say, 5 to 10 minutes, because that is where the value is realized. The what is only the jumping off point. Okay, so that list we just had on the buyer overview is what you do. You have to translate that into why you do it. They're not going to buy the things you do. That's just his time. So your tasks are time and what? It's the reason you do them that the value is. So what does a buyer want from you? What's the reason they want, what's the purpose? See, that's the benefit, and they'll buy the benefit. We all buy benefit. So give me a list. Just, there's not really a wrong answer here.
Tom's buyers wants to pay his green fees. And Bettina says to find you the home you want to live in.
Okay.
Sally says save our buyer time, money, and aggravation.
Good. Love it. Love it.
And Kimmy says, knowledge. Have the knowledge to serve your clients. Julie says, explain the process of home buying. First-time home buyers, all the steps. And Linda says, knowledge and ease.
I love it. There's a lot more. There's a lot more. You can keep your brain going. But see, when you're talking about what you're doing, you have to translate why you do it, because that's where the value is. Okay, so let's take Julie Larson's comment. So when you say, I want to have a buyer consultation, why? What's in it for me to have a buyer consultation? That sounds like an enormous amount of time. So that you are educated along the way. That's a benefit. I want to be educated along the way so that you can make an informed decision. Again, benefit has value. Okay, but the thing I do doesn't have value. It's the reason we do it that has value. The other one, which was to where Sally said, so save our buyer money. Absolutely. Let's don't overpay for a property if we don't have to. That's a benefit. But what you did was the CMA and studying the property. Understand? The what you do doesn't have value. It's the reason you did it and the benefit that has value. So how about time? We know this can be very inconvenient. And if you're in a hurry, we're in a hurry. We want it to be on your time frame because time is important. Now, what about aggravation? This sounds a lot like, how about lowering legal risk? Yes, I'm interested in paying to lower legal risk. See, that's a benefit, and that has value. But the thing I did, the what I do does not have value. The benefit has value. So this is all under the heading, speak the language of benefit. And that's why sometimes the long lists of things we do, 150 things a buyer agent does. Guess what a buyer does? They look at that, they see no value. Why? Because no one is translating the value of the thing you do. So you have to do that. You have to say, what does it mean for you when I do this thing? And that's a touchdown, by the way.
Also, by the way, the buyer's guide overview is in the chat, so you can download it from there to use.
Any other? I love this. You could say, the best home. Yeah, protect their risk. Yeah, so you're educated. I mean, you got to practice this. You got to practice speaking the language of benefit. Just always ask yourself, is what I just told them benefit or a feature? So go back to the list again. I go back to the document that.
Yep.
Let's try this now. Let's go look at each one of the items and you come up with a benefit for each one. Okay, start right off the bat with the coordinating the initial buyer consultation. What's the benefit in doing that? I just mentioned it, right? So that they are educated in the process, so that you are informed in your decisions. What's the benefit of them signing a buyer broker agreement? What's in it for them? Guys, what's in it for them? I hope you think of fiduciary protections, confidentiality and reasonable care and diligence and loyalty, all of those things that make up a representation of a client. What about financing options? What's in it for them? Well, my job is to make sure that you pay as least as possible on the payments and the interest rate and the fees. So again, we're protecting investment here. We're protecting money, but also that you have the right mortgage product and that, going in, again, being educated about that. That's the benefit. The thing we do, not the benefit. Let's skip down. Like we said, find the right home. Well, find the right home is actually a benefit that's on this list. So now we have to find a bigger benefit than finding the right home. What would that mean? If they find the right home, what does that mean to them? I mean, what would it mean when you found the right home? Think about when you bought, when you purchased, or a recent buyer that you worked with. They're not settling. They're getting what they want. And I mean, we buy, look, we're all so unique in what we want in a home. A home is, my goodness, it's the center of where the family and friends come together. It's, spouses and partners come together. And this is, I mean, love is in a home. So everyone's so unique about how they look at that. But when you speak about those things that you learned about them, that is the reason that they're willing to pay. We all are. By the way, I can hear Steve Roney in my head say there's so many studies that say people will pay more to get more of what they want than to sacrifice what they want and then pay less. See, again, this is back to that fundamental principle. When we explain the complexity, we get value. Same thing. The delivering unbiased feedback. I guess we're almost out of time here, so I'm probably answering some of these that I'd rather have you guys answer. Maybe that should be homework. Is take a look at this form, print it out, and see if you could come up with a unique benefit for each one of the bullet points. And then you'll find yourself presenting the benefit and not the feature. The feature is just the thing, but the benefit is where the value is. I mean, my gosh, I think you guys are so good at what you do. It's just changing. I think it's just enhancing the perspective in which you look at something. I'm looking at like review and work with the buyer during the appraisal process. I'm telling you, they have no freaking clue what the benefit of that is until you reveal it. What's the benefit? Well, often appraisals are conditioned upon your ability to get financing. And on one hand, we need the underwriter to approve the appraisal and it to come in at price. On the other hand, we do not want to overpay. And we want to make sure that those comparables that are used in that appraisal are accurate. So this is complicated. We may find ourselves hoping that it appraises for what we agreed to pay. In other cases, we may want a low appraisal. And every transaction is different. And they're going to say, that's why I want you. See, value. Because it is complicated. But if you would go in there and just say, oh, we're going to walk you through the appraisal process, I'm telling you, nothing. Zippo. Right? They're not going to get it. Man.
Some real passion in the chat today, everybody. I love these all caps.
Yeah. Hey Joe, just a note, because in case I forget, but can we have these chats printed so that we can circulate them in sales meetings and other trainings and things like that? I really appreciate you guys adding to the conversation. I hope it sparked a lot of thought on how you improve your presentation skills overall. It's particularly how you work with buyers when there's not a lot of time. Speak the language of benefit, and use the skill set of looking at the forms and the language. Try to inject the form into the conversation. Like instead of just answering it, say something like, that's a great question. I think we should look at the section of the agreement that addresses that, and use that as a presentation tool. When you do that, you show complexity. You don't have to tell them the complexity. You're showing them the complexity.
Well, that's a great point. I do think I can get the chat. We'll go ahead and import that into a Google Doc. There's a form that we can use to get permission from Mark to be able to show the important comments that are coming from sales meeting. And then it's about a 12-step process, Will, but I can tell you, if you and I can go grab some wings later this week, I think I could probably get that done for you. We'll see what we can do. But isn't it important to get exactly what you want when you need it? And isn't that really what we're talking? I mean, I can only eat 24 wings at a sitting. So it's like, it's going to be an easy thing, but we'll make it work. But first, I need you to sign the broker the technology guy to export the chat. As long as you get that form filled, then we're golden.
Oh, man. That's perfect. Dude, you are awesome. That's like a solo, man. I love it. showed complexity. Got to get the documents signed. There's a lot more to just getting the chat than printing it off. All right. I love it. Anything else before we adjourn, Mike? What am I missing? Rob, anything?
I think we covered it well today.
I think you're maybe a little more passion next time, little mild, but it was only 3 Red Bulls, like you said. So maybe you need one more.
Okay. All right. Next time I'll turn it up. I do sincerely hope that you all have a wonderful day. It's just an honor to work with you. I speak on behalf of all the leadership. You are our fulfillment. Anytime we can help you, we go home happy. And when our head hits the pillow, we're gracious and grateful for each of you. It's more than just work relationships, guys. These are friendships that matter. And I think we have a very worthy cause. We look at what we're up against. We're the beacon on the hill. We can be the example not only of the industry, but we can be an example inside of our walls of our company here to have a safe place to work and love and support each other, teach each other, which is what we've done today. So thank you for letting me do what I love to do as well. So I wish you all the best. Call me anytime. Call any of us anytime because you'll make our day. All right.